recording. Okay, welcome everybody. I see we have Devendra, Alec, Dan, and Yogi on the line. JP will be calling in shortly, and I suspect Rob as well, who was just on another call that I was on. First, one housekeeping is the recording. As mentioned a minute ago, we are recording these meetings. Unlike the steering committee meetings, however, these recordings are not being stored on our website, but I'm sending directly to each of you. And we are in the process of coming up with a mechanism that will allow those of you who are on this advisory team access through a password. But for now, I'm sending it to you, as I mentioned, by just sending an email out with slides, meeting minutes, or whatever it is that I have available. And welcome, JP. I see that you're on the line now as well.
Hello, sorry for being late.
Oh, that's okay. So with that said, the agenda is now shared on your screen, hopefully. We'll start with a recap from the last meeting, which includes the vision, BSMA's objectives, pain points, and then another slide I just added based on some input JP just provided. Then we'll talk about next steps. So that's really a brainstorming part, the biggest brainstorming part of the meeting. Assuming people are aligned about having a panel discussion, we'll discuss that topic and then our next meeting date. So this is nothing changed from the last meeting where I think we finalized the vision, which was edited by David Volk, which is to, via a common process and data model, align the pharma and biotech clinical supply industry to achieve seamless collaboration and information exchange throughout the supply network. Our objective within BSMA and this advisory group is to help move the industry towards achieving the desired end state or vision by educating its members and their supplier base about the vision, including its benefits and the problems it solves, and creating a call to action that motivates them to support and act on achieving this vision. Putting another way, we're saying our objective isn't necessarily to come up with a technology solution, but more of an educational role. Pain points, what are we trying to solve? The lack of integration between the manufacturers, service providers, and intermediate companies results in the inability to obtain critical real-time information such as the quantity, status, and location of inventory, whether it's at CMOs, warehouses, distributors, etc. And this can create the following types of problems. One, increased risk of stockouts, excess inventory, safety stock, or expired and obsolete inventory, increased shipping and expediting costs, increased time tracking and expediting information from multiple systems with outdated information, and increased risk of using incorrect information for demand planning, supply planning, and inventory management. The next slide is one we can thank JP for providing. And JP, I'll let you read it if you would.
Yeah, no, happy to do it. And now I'm reading it again. It's a duplicate, but it was just to organize my mindset properly, because typically I'd like to come from what's the problem. And so if we have a kind of an understanding of what the problem is, then we can come up with an idea. What do we think we want to accomplish? That's more the visionary kind of direction. And so that's where I started, at least for writing for myself, what I think it's a problem statement. But now you just reviewed what the pain points are. It's basically the same. So this is maybe confusing for all, but for me, I typically organize things. This is the problem, and then from there we want to see how we take it. So it's maybe just reversing the pain points with the division, or at least that works in my mind. But happy to hear what others think, and if we need a problem statement on top of it, or that is a duplicative effort.
Well, it does pose a question for me. The name that I've given this group or this initiative, real-time inventory management. I'm not sure if that's the right name, and and maybe now that we've had time to identify the vision in the problem statement and our role, maybe it's time to go back and revisit that name, because we seem to be using it not just amongst ourselves, but at the steering committee meeting, and it probably will eventually, that name, or if there is a better name, find its way to a broader audience. And I'm not sure if it's capturing what we want people to read into it. Any thoughts on that?
So first I want to share my thoughts on JP's articulation of the problem. I don't think it's a duplication at all. I really believe it augments, complements what you folks have established as the vision and the pain points and so on, because now you're getting into the cause. What I'm reading JP's statement to me is the cause of the problem is we do not have real-time visibility of demand, supply, and inventory in the supply chain from end to end. Because why? Because systems are disconnected and there's no platform. I personally believe, and I'm naive in all this, if we took steps towards achieving that visibility, in my humble opinion, that would be an incredible contribution of our steering committee. And back to your point, Bill, I wouldn't be that hung up on the name, to be honest with you. I'm more hung up on the scope. And I think you guys have described the scope pretty well.
Okay, thank you. As you were saying that, I did write something down, which I think captures it better. Real-time clinical end-to-end inventory visibility. Maybe too many words, but that captures the essence.
Introducing all the clinical is important. We are in the drug development phase.
Yeah.
I like that. End-to-end has to be there.
Yeah.
Can you repeat that, Bill?
In the word, real-time clinical end-to-end inventory visibility.
I do feel like I want to ask the group this, that the priority is finished goods. I don't know if I'm
yes,
different in that manner.
Yeah, that was discussed and agreed on in one of our first calls. So I can add that.
That's fine.
And finished good inventory visibility. Now we're getting into scope. But yeah.
I agree, yeah.
Okay.
So to be clear, the goal of establishing this statement is so that when ready, we can put this in front of a much larger audience and effectively engage them based on the title statement.
Yeah, and maybe I went too far, and as the vendor said, maybe I didn't need to tackle the title, but I'm glad we're talking about it because if nothing else, it's helping us get aligned on the scope. So I think it captures it quite nicely by saying real time, it's clinical, it's end to end, it's finished goods inventory, and it's all about visibility.
That's across parties, yeah. Across parties, across systems.
Exactly, exactly.
Now we just need to come up with an acronym.
Okay,
All right.
okay. Next steps. Okay, so this is where we sort of got hung up at the last call, and I think it was because we said, well, how are we going to educate members without quantifying the financial and service level benefits to members and their providers? And some of you on the call started mentioning some high level facts. Well, I couldn't tell if they were facts or if they were just information to sort of give a general idea. You know, but for example, I remember David Volk saying, well, you know, there are X number of clinical studies and multiply that times the average cost per clinical study, then we spend X $1 million a year in clinical studies. And if we reduce our inventory, we would save X zillion dollars or whatever the case may be. So, so the first bullet here is meant to bring us back to where we left off at the last meeting, which was how do we quantify what these financial and service level benefits are? Now, I'm hoping that we can spend a fair amount of time on this call on that. But one thing that Devendra and I were talking about offline after the last call was, you know, I don't think anybody on this call has all that information at their fingertips or the time to dig into it. So BSMA is authorizing an internship for $2,500 with a prestigious university. And I was wondering if there's anybody on this call who might be willing to sponsor that individual.
You mean come up with the money?
That's, yeah, yeah.
2,500. Which university is it?
I think it's one right down the road from you.
Oh,
We don't all know where Dan is.
Devendra, I think you said Northeastern.
It could be Northeastern, it could be Arizona State University, it could be University of Southern California, USC. It could be the Keck Graduate Institute. We got 4 right now to pick from.
send me, Bill, if you don't mind, just send me an email. I can, I'm not sure at all what 10th Pin does in these situations, but, you know, we're heavily invested in clinical supplies, so it may be that doing something like this would be up our alley.
Yeah, I mean, I will do that because I think we can all benefit from this. I mean, if you think about it, this individual could do us all a great service by, you know, looking at collecting data that's, I'm sure, available in various search engines to let us know what the spend is. And, you know, and you could, once you get all this data, begin to tell the story. Here's what we spend as an industry, or here's what Gartner might have said is one can save if they become more efficient with technology solutions, or whatever the case may be. I mean, it's a mound of information that eventually we'll need to put our heads together and try to tell a story with. But I think that will help nicely get get what we're after, as well as maybe use that individual to help us beginning to collect white papers and other best practice information, which you recall we said we wanted to start putting on our website.
May I request this group to give me the bullet points for what should be the scope of this for this intern that we have in mind? Just the bullet points, and then I will craft the scope of that study. If you could do that by the end of this week, I'd be really grateful. And on Monday, I can get cracking and line up an alternative or two to do the study in the next 2 months. June and July, by end of July, we would get it done, if not sooner.
Okay.
Fair request?
So it's a 2-month. I'm sorry, Devendra. It's a 2-month
Maximum.
sponsorship.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
2 months, it's $15 an hour, so it's 166 hours.
I see. Okay.
We want to get it done in less than 2 months is our goal, so it doesn't drag out.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
right, and you've done this, Dan, hundreds of times. I've not done that many times, so you know what it is. Would get a one-page scope, and by that I mean just give me the bullets of what do we want the study to give us, what answers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I just want to add to this because to me, I wrote down some notes from David's comments last meeting, and here's what he shared. He said, $180 billion is spent on research and development of new drugs. 20 billion is spent on material, and approximately 50% material is wasted, which is a $10 billion problem. So to quantify and make an impactful statement, as I think about our new title, which I think I've got written down close to correctly, is real-time clinical end-to-end finished goods inventory invisibility, or visibility, is a $10 billion problem. And that's effectively what we're trying to solve here, is can there be better processes, interconnectedness between all parties within the supply chain to reduce a $10 billion problem, which is a lot, right? And each individual company may not think it's that big a problem, or may recognize that it's a problem, but doesn't realize the grand, the extent of the problem. And by coming together as an industry, that could be a lot of, a lot of treatment and care, a lot of money spent on treatment and care and delivering finished goods for clinical trials and, and beyond, if that $10 billion could be utilized more effectively. So I don't know, I was looking at the numbers, and I think that that would be impactful for anybody to read or realize.
And Alec, I would add that with the national concern and focus on reducing prescription drug prices, which happens to be the mantra of many, many organizations, like CLSA, for example, this fits in very well. And back to your numbers, David Volk on a previous call had said, and didn't want to be quoted, that at his company, they have inventories in clinical trials amounting to $1 billion. So I'm going to take the position half of that is going to be wasted. So that is $500 million. And you talk of $10 billion for the industry as waste. it jives, right? We are in the ballpark. So I think there's some confirmation there.
There's another area of savings too, and it's on the human side.
Exactly.
I was at a client where they were planning mostly using spreadsheets, and it was a large pharma. And I asked the question to just one person. I said, how much of your month is spent getting the data accurate so you can replan again? It's like half the month, to get that snapshot kind of close to then rerun the plan and make any adjustments. So that's a considerable effort. I think it also comes without having full confidence because the data might be a week off, right? Because you have to slowly collect it and then put it in place and make sure it's accurate. So I think that a lot of people's functions within clinical supplies, whether they're planners or whether they're CMO managers, is to this problem.
That's very true, Dan. And the other thing I thought you were alluding to, but so I'll add to it, and that is how many clinical studies have had to be extended or even canceled because the protocol stated X number of patients needed to be treated, and some of those patients weren't able to be treated because they ran out of drug, or drug didn't get to the site on time because they didn't have visibility to the drug, or an accurate forecast, or didn't know where the drug was in time to get it to the patient when they needed to be dosed.
And supply disruption, lengthening the study of some sort. Yeah.
Yeah.
Either in startup or lengthening the study, I guess.
Yeah, and it's hard to put a price on that, but just think about it, that the study, time is money.
Mm-hmm.
Let alone the patient life could have been affected here.
So I'm not having an answer on how we can do it, but I just wanted to share experiences that I had with UCB and Amgen in trying to, make this more meaningful. I think all of the bigger biopharma companies like to come up with a kind of a business case that they can present to senior leadership for approval for certain kind of efforts. And there's multiple kind of elements that go in here. So if you think about cost, then you really need to be careful and make sure that we have finance experts helping us guide how we name certain things. Because in all fairness, most of the companies financially treat clinical trials as projects. And so any kind of payment that's done on clinical supplies is just, a charge that is taken instantly as a cost and as a sunk cost. And so the cost component of what the value is of the unit is becoming a kind of an undefinable kind of a element. And I think we really need to stay away from all of that. I think what Alec was doing is much more taking a high level approach. If we can ballpark, this is the number that the industry invests annually on research. And I think the number that you mentioned, it sounds like a 10% is, allocated to clinical supply costs, which makes sense to me. I think that's a reasonable number. That makes sense. But I don't think that we as an initiative should make any claim that we can reduce that by 10% or something like that. That's at least not my feeling that we want to go to. I think we more like to identify what is causing this and how we can come up with, recommendations, how to, avoid that or minimize that.
Makes sense, JP. Although I would be hard to, if we uncover information, let's say from a Gartner article that says that companies that have efficient technology solutions save on average X percent, I mean, I've seen it countless times when implementing S&OP, that S&OP saves organizations, I think it's 30%. So I know it's a stretch, but you know, if we have different types of information like that and put it in a bowl, I think we can start pointing to certain pieces of information that say, if you look at this data from this Gartner as an example, this from someone else, this from someone else, you know, they range from 20% to 50%. We can just say, you know, here's what it could mean without guaranteeing, obviously, what that number is.
Yeah, I've dealt with a couple of those studies, but you know, I have, it's a personal opinion. You know, I think there's never a sound evidence really that substantially, you know, supports the claim there. But that's okay if you do it at that high level, because it's more directional than it's about the real number. But here's where my thinking is coming from. One of the companies, I won't name which one it is, they really had a good practice, because if I want to, you know, run a project and I was claiming, you know, certain kind of savings, I have to deliver on that project. And so if I didn't deliver on the project, then, you know, I had a kind of real challenge to explain why not. And, you know, that impacted my bonus at the year end. So basically, you are just coming up with business cases that are not overestimating and that become more realistic. And those business cases look really different from the ones that are just, you know, making the sky blue and like with implementing, I'm just naming one, SAP, we are going to save 10 million on an annual base.
I agree, JP. I think looking at the problem holistically as industry-wide wasted, you know, cost inefficiency rather than claiming or potentially going to market with our findings as a steering committee and initiating the conversation. The goal is not to claim how much we can save, but really awareness about the problem, educating about various about the problem specifics, and I know we talked about this in the last meeting. I have it written down as one of the goals and the objectives is to really create awareness, educate, and then provide solutions. I can't remember who, which one of the members, whether it was David or JP or Dan or one of the other members of this committee, suggested that the best thing that we could probably do is create awareness, educate, and then provide potential solutions. I think it will be implied that the potential solutions, if we are going to address the problem of inventory visibility being lacking, by nature of solving inventory visibility problems, we're going to create better cost management as a result. But no guarantees, right? No guarantee on any specific percentage savings or number, you know, specifics.
So Alec, question on that. When you say identify potential solutions, if we back up, I think what we're saying is that what we've defined as the scope, the real-time clinical end-to-end finished good inventory visibility across all partners, is the solution. So are we saying if we achieve that vision, then companies will be able to save some number that we're not going to quantify, but we are going to quantify how much money is at stake, and by having this visibility, you're going to be able to reduce that number or save some number, and helping them understand how that can happen.
I would agree. We're backing into a solution that's going to save money by identifying the problem, which is we don't have real-time clinical end-to-end finished goods inventory visibility across all partners.
So it would be good then to maybe come up with examples, case studies, or whatever the case may be, to show that companies that have achieved this visibility can have the following examples of things that they've been able to, of costs they've been able to reduce. Not necessarily saying what the costs are, but say, they implemented this, and as a result, this got improved.
So if I may play back what I heard, and I'm going to try to be, I want to bulletize my thoughts. What you said is, for the study, we need to define the problem, one. Number two, we need to analyze the reported causes of the problem. Number three, we estimate the costs and the benefits to be realized if things are changed. Number four, identify potential solutions without quantitative numbers, but identify solutions. Number five, make recommendations on behalf of the industry. And somewhere in between, you insert some references that tell you what benefits in a quantitative fashion can be obtained. That I heard is what you really want. Except I have a little concern that you're not identifying the problem correctly. The problem, I think, is we have excess inventory as well as stockouts in clinical trials. Not having visibility is a cause or is a solution, but it's not the problem. Am I off base?
My response to that would be, if the problem is wasted materials because of oversupply or inability to deliver product because of stockouts, it's a completely uncontrolled problem industry-wide. There's no, because there is no visibility, organizations cannot manage that process. Some organizations have stockouts, some have wasted material. It's a problem at both ends.
Yes.
And so I don't know. I would think the cause, in fact, is lack of visibility. Lack of tools to measure needed inventory, which is a cause from lack of visibility, right? So if you give somebody the tool to solve the problem, then they can order and take action. Dan talked about 2 weeks to just reconcile for a clinical trial, and then the next 2 weeks to replan, to take action, which is not only time consuming, but costly. So what are those problems? Inefficient data transfer, lack of, inefficient access points to all parties. I don't know. I'm just learning some of this with you guys.
I'm also hearing over the last several months now from all of you that inadequate planning causes some of these problems. So that precedes visibility. Should that be included in the scope of this study?
Inadequate planning.
Yeah. Or, Jean-Peter convinced me the other day that we should all be thinking about demand pull planning, forecasting. And I tend to move in that direction. So that's a thought that came to my mind.
Yeah, I have mixed feelings on that, Devendra. Part of me is saying, then we're coming up with the solution. And maybe there's another way to address what you said, and that is that going back a step, we said that we were going to share what's at stake, and we talked about that, money, time, lives, extended clinical studies, and potential solutions, perhaps referencing what companies have achieved with better visibility. So that last comment, if you use some examples, those examples could say, hey, this company achieved better visibility, which enabled them to do X, Y, and Z. And that X, Y, and Z might be push or doing something with that information.
I like that idea a lot. I think that should be a part of the study. Whatever case studies we can identify of successes, it'll be solid to have in the report.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we have some, go ahead.
One thing I think of as we talk about all this is, do we know who's in the market potentially solving these problems? How many of them are members of BSMA? How many clinical trial, pharmaceutical companies, big brands, what percentage of market share or what percentage of penetration does BSMA have in the industry? Do we clearly have a statistically significant number of members in BSMA, but I'm just wondering, I think in order to survey member companies, maybe anonymously or in some form or fashion, to get examples of success stories and testimonials that support our theory or our objective of addressing this and educating the industry and then attempting to solve that. So I just don't know, from my experience, short-term experience with this group. Do we know those answers regarding BSMA's market penetration or just sort of membership penetration in the industry?
So I want to help be very focused on the task you gentlemen have taken on for this advisory committee. And for that, I would say to you, Alec, that we have the critical mass to make this study a viable study. We have incredible representation of clinical service providers, all the way from Schrocken to 4G Clinical and about 20 other companies in between. And you bring up the issue of surveys, something Dan Silva has done brilliantly well in the past. We should take that on as a separate subject altogether. And I do not want to overwhelm this very well-defined task on hand. But I think we'll deal with that separately to see. And the special interest group at Deloitte did some incredible work under Dan's leadership to determine the benchmarking of the industry. So, Dan, did I address that at all or no? Dan Silva, any?
But yeah, I mean, we had spent some time looking into profiling a lot of companies and talking about their maturity and what their current capabilities are. This seems like something where, you know, if we wanted to do a survey, we would need to come up with it. You have to be very careful with the questions you ask. I mean, I keep learning that lesson. People misinterpret them or answer it wrongly, and you have to do a follow-up with everyone, even if you think you know what their answers mean. But that could provide a little more insight into this in terms of both what companies are doing as well as what's been there. What do we think would be the cost of not having real-time visibility in both their operations as well as their decisions and their results? So I think this could be a really good idea. And you know, the other thing you have to do is you have to build out the survey with a company or two. You have to have their input. You can't figure it out yourself as well. And then you have to trial it before you put it on the marketplace. So pick one or two companies and have them do it. You'd be surprised at what you find out. What you thought was plainly clear, you used a term that threw people off, stuff like that. Yeah, so it would probably take us 6 months to be able to do it, because you want valid data back.
Well, let me see if I can just get a rough idea just by asking you, JP. What percentage of your IVR clients have their IVR integrated with the company's ERP platform and with their distributor?
Well, there's not a single number for that. So ERP is probably less than 10%.
Okay. So there we go, right there. That's a major statement.
Yeah, but that's factual information that's readily available. So if we, you know, and I don't think that's a real high secret. But the integration into the logistics service providers, you know, that's really close to 100%.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
it doesn't make sense not to integrate to an institute that needs to trigger the shipping activity. That's what the purpose is of an RTSM system.
Yeah. Yeah. But then it gets
But-
convoluted because if I use Allmac as an example, the Allmac inventory part number may not be the same part number.
That's a whole different story. But
Yeah.
I just wanted to probably add some experience to what Dan was sharing. So I've worked with ISP in a work group to collect industry kind of data. And to Dan's point, the effort to get in there really to align on the terminology and definition is massive. And even if you have the alignment with a group of companies that are participating in the effort, there's still misalignment with the rest of the companies. So that is a path. If we want to go there, we need to be very careful, in my opinion. The other thing, I did the same with Tufts University about 8 years ago with, I would say, the top 10 biopharma companies. And, you know, even with them, there's no way of alignment. There's no consistent data existing in all these companies that can, you know, be aggregated in reporting purposes. So I know there's a desire, we want to do things like that, but we really need to realize the effort it takes to get to it, and then the output we can expect out of it.
Okay. Well, in the interest of time, let's jump to the next topic. I think we all have a lot of useful feedback on, you know, quantifying the financial and service level benefits and what that means. And hopefully with the intern, we can start collecting that information and hopefully start identifying some clients, if you will, that have examples that we could point to that shows how they've achieved cost savings or service level improvements with the better visibility. So next question then is the roundtable and panel discussion. I've talked about this now for a couple meetings, and I know we sort of got, I sort of put a pause on it because at least when we talked about it 2 and 4 weeks ago, we weren't clear, what's the purpose, what's the content, who would it be? And therefore I keep pushing the date out. So what are people's thoughts on what we should do here?
I think, Bill, the key thing is finding the right person to drive it, and I think that's been the challenge.
Okay.
I think everyone's just super busy. It's hard. I mean, we were lucky with the demand forecasting one. Somehow I got set up with 3 other folks, or maybe it was 4. We narrowed it down to 3. I think it's sort of maybe you got to find that right person to recruit. That would, or maybe it's a collection actually. If you look at your members to say who might be good, check it out with them, and then once that happens, then it gets started.
Right. I think it's a very valid point, and I then you do it, I do it as well. Facilitate these kind of things. It takes a lot of effort if you want to do it right. You need to prepare it well. You need to get to know the panelists well to have a kind of a natural setting. That's personally, I think what needs to be done. I think, without making a commitment to our time or whether or not to do it, I would, like to see what are the 3 or 4 questions that we want to, put in front of a panel. Just in light of what we have defined as the objective, the scope, and the vision. And based on these questions, kind of have a discussion like, is this the right timing to do it now? Or would it be more meaningful if we, keep working for maybe over the summertime, at least that we have a kind of a part of the framework of materials that we want to start working with, that we can, use that in the discussion for the panel. But it's a minimum, I think, if we want to prepare ourselves and find the right participants for a panel discussion, what are the questions that we want to put to the panel?
Good approach. I think that might help you to do the first.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because now you know what it is you're asking. And people might say, sure, I know how to talk about that. You're not asking me much at all.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I can picture some of these questions being, what are the benefits of having better visibility? So we use the panel to kind of help get people to really appreciate what the benefits are.
Yeah, and that I understand that, and I think I agree to it. But in my mind, we should have a kind of discussion as a team first, so that we have an alignment there before we start talking in a panel setting, because then we may set ourselves up for individual representation that needs to be corrected when we continue working.
The other thing I would add to that is a question like, what are the benefits of better inventory visibility? It's a question that is industry-wide unsolved. Maybe we don't, in fact, know what those benefits are yet. You know what I'm saying? Like, we haven't solved that problem. Nobody has really solved that problem, is what I've heard in these meetings. It's been acknowledged and documented that these are problems that are unsolved. So, you know, preparing somebody to talk about what the hypothetical benefits would be, sure, that.
So my 2 cents worth, Bill, would be the minimum that would make me very happy is we have a roundtable at the annual conference on the 20th of October in Foster City. Because prior to that, we will have completed that study that you all talked about. By end of July, we'll have the study done. And by then, we collectively will have a good handle on the costs and the benefits and potential solutions. And that also gives all of you plenty of time to do a bang-up job at the annual conference. If you feel that some kind of an interim activity would be beneficial after June, hats off to you. But end of June is, I think, you're pushing yourself too hard.
Yeah, I agree. And I like that idea that, you know, if we can get all this data in 60 days, then the content is right there at our fingertips that we can basically just share that information amongst this group and then identify, you know, what is your interpretation of this? What do you think, what do you think this means? What should we do with this information? I mean, there's countless questions we can ask.
I love that stepwise progression.
Okay.
Just Bill, real quick. I agree. June 29th or 30th seems we're not ready. Maybe that we're not ready for that. The one idea that I would propose would be using a panel discussion to uncover more information and gather more advocates, like by letting them know that there's a team, there's a steering committee that's focused on this problem. Here's what we've identified and what we're addressing, and here are some of the actions that we're taking. But it would potentially give the opportunity for others to voluntarily participate in the research, in the problem, that we're trying to solve. So just an idea. I don't know if that's appropriate for BSMA in a panel discussion, but it would preempt, or it would potentially give us more validation and more information and more partners outside of the steering committee that could add to the research that could then be presented in October at the meeting.
Well,
Just an idea.
Well, how about this? I would like to propose that you all be the participants, and I can be the either Devendra or I can be the moderator, and we can and going back to what we said, the whole purpose of this group was to educate. So if we start off by asking the basic questions to each of you is, what does real-time clinical end-to-end finished good inventory visibility, what does that mean to each of you? And, and each of you could put your own spin on it. Then the next question, what's at stake if we achieve this? By then we will have all this information at our fingertips, and you can each pick and choose your interpretation of what's at stake, because we know it's money, it's time, it's patient lives, it's extended time of study. So you all will know that. And we can go around the table and you can explain that. And then, and then, give some, what do you think are some examples of what our company can achieve if they address this issue? Again, we'll have that. So I think we would have achieved the mission of this group in BSMA, because you're basically using the forum to enlighten the audience about the importance of the end-to-end inventory, and to get them to start thinking about how they can jump on that bandwagon and achieve that for their own organization.
I really like your conclusion and your recommendation there, that you folks you are that panel, you are that round table which Bill will moderate, and it's just a matter of deciding when you want to do it. And the other thing I want to respond to JP's idea, it's a damn good one. How do we gather more advocates? How do we get more people to provide input for the research? And my question to all of you is, could we make an attempt on LinkedIn to take this message forward to the larger community and do some crowdsourcing?
Yeah, Devendra, that is what I was thinking. I guess I don't know whether BSMA has a LinkedIn group of all its members.
A little louder, Yogendra.
Okay, my bad. Yeah, is it better now?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, sorry about that. So I know we are on top of the hour. So what I was thinking, Devendra, we would need to have a LinkedIn group with all the members that are member of BSMA in that group. And then, as Bill said, posing some of the question like JP or Bill, right? And having that conversation going on, and then knowing, this is the meeting. So what you would like to hear, what you would like to see. So at that crowdsourcing that you said will be pretty powerful in my mind, because it gives them opportunity, or at least because it's a snowballing effect, right? Somebody will start and then other will start opening up.
Yeah, yeah. I know we've run across the hour, so two questions. One is, are we okay continuing this discussion same time 2 weeks from today?
Yeah, we are good.
Yep.
Okay.
I think so, yeah.
And the other question was, is there any, are there any gaps in the skill sets of this team where we should add one or two more people to the group because we don't have such and such a skill set on this team?
So
As in-
actually, on
Okay.
that front, Bill, we had one meeting with one of the company, right, Innovative Pharma, and I've, she was pretty vocal about the problems and some of those things. And then I saw your email, and then I asked her whether she would like to join this panel. So my point is that, it's like both way, right? One is the skill gap, another one is if people are in the field and they are passionate and they want to contribute, right?
Yeah,
So,
well, it's
yeah.
more the former. I mean, we do have a couple, 3 other members who are
Yes.
on this group that just couldn't make it today. We have Almac. Mark Trombella from BioMarin has joined. He just couldn't make today's meeting, and Beijing couldn't make today. So I think from that perspective, we have that. But for example, I am not a process excellence or a Six Sigma type person. So I cannot bring to this group a skill set that maybe some of you have, or maybe none of us have, that might help get us closer to where we need to be.
Got it. Actually, that's very good point, Bill. One of the thing would be about the process, and once we know the problem and some of those things, one of the thing is the best practices, and over there, if we have that person who has done some of these things, he can well articulate. Yeah, that's good. Let me think. In case I see anybody, I will refer. But I understand now what you're saying. That gap in the skill means, yeah.
Okay. Okay, it looks like we've lost half the
Yes.
group here. So I want to again thank you everybody for joining this call. I think we got a lot of good information and great interaction turned to this call. So thank you.
No, thank you. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Bill.
Thanks. Thanks, Devendra.
Thank you, Devendra. Bye-bye.